Stage 13 Infinitives. Oh my goodness, so we're in the blue book. Farewell, red book. R.I.P. Grumio. And so far, you have seen verbs that have been written like this. Laborat, laboravit, dicit, dixit. And the difference between these two parts, of course, is that the first part indicates the present tense, and it ends in T, so it's literally he or she is working, versus the second part, which is the perfect tense. Think about V sucks there. He or she worked. Now, you probably noticed in the blue book, though, that verbs are written a little bit differently. They have three parts, and something's kind of strange about the endings of two of those parts compared to how you have seen them in the past. Well, first, let's get our terms right. The verbs from this point forward are going to have three parts, and those parts are called principal parts. Let's take an example. This comes from the Stage 13 list. Canto, cantare, cantavi. It means to sing. If this were the red book, this is how that verb would be written. Cantat, cantavit. Present tense, perfect tense. Now, how are we going to rework these principal parts into this new paradigm? Well, here we go. Canto is still giving us the present tense. Think about O means I, S means you, T means he, she at present tense. So canto means sings. Literally, since it ends in O, it means I sing or I am singing. Now we have this middle part, the second part, cantare. It ends in an R-E, and that's the infinitive. It means to sing. And then look, cantavi sort of looks like cantavit, except it's not he, she, it with the T there. It's going to be I meaning I, right? First person singular. Iis, diet, musis, tisa, run. So it would be sang, or literally I sang, or I have sung. Okay? So we're going to focus on that second part, which is the infinitive. First of all, what is an infinitive? It is just the basic form or meaning of a verb. That's it. It comes from a Latin word, of course, infinitus, which means without limit. And this statement's a little bit strange to understand. Infinitives are not limited to a specific person or a specific number, meaning an infinitive's ending will not change. Like, all of their verb forms in Latin will change their ending depending on who the subject is and depending on whether or not that person is singular or plural, but not infinitives. They always end in RE. And they're always translated simply as to verb. So how do you recognize infinitives in Latin? Well, it's actually a little bit more than the RE. We're going to look at the vowel that comes right before. So it'll be one of these four combinations: ARE, ERE with the long mark over the E, ERE without the long mark, or IRE. Okay? Now, how are infinitives used? They're used in two main ways in Latin, and in English for that matter. The first one, though, is going to be the main way that we're going to see it used, at least this year. It's called a complementary infinitive. Complementary comes from that verb complet, meaning to fill, stage 12. So a complementary infinitive is used to fill out the meaning of another verb. I put in boldface in these English examples all of the infinitives, like I want to run, I do not want to listen to Mr. Allen anymore. Grumio was not able to flee, right? In none of these is the infinitive the main verb of the sentence. If you look at the first sentence, I want to run, the main verb is want. To run is sort of just like complementing the wanting. It's like going along with, right? It's accompanying. I do not want. Do not want is the main verb of that sentence. To listen is just sort of filling out the meaning of do not want. I hope that makes sense, all right? Now, a second way infinitives can be used is they could be used as the subject of the entire sentence, and that's called the subjective infinitive. Here's a famous phrase that we'll learn next year: errare est humanum. To make a mistake is human. Well, the to make a mistake part, that's actually the whole subject of the sentence. Like I said, though, we're going to focus mostly on complementary, and you'll just see a handful of subjective infinitives this school year. Let's take a look at a few examples. I put the infinitives in boldface here. Ego dormire volo. And apparently I put a second period there. It means I want to sleep. Ego pugnare possum. I am able to fight. Cocuus cenam optimam parare potest. The cook is able to prepare the best dinner. And then vinum bibere volumus. Mus means we. We want to drink wine. Oh boy. Now, Besides giving us sort of that basic form and meaning of the verb, infinitives also tell us a verb's conjugation. So what in the world is a conjugation? Here it is. A conjugation is simply a family of verbs where all the verbs have the same endings and they have the same vowel right before those endings. How many conjugations, i.e. verb families, are there in Latin? There are 4 conjugations, 4 verb families. And here's an example from each verb family or conjugation. Look at the first conjugation. You had this verb way back when, parat, parawit. Notice the A. Anytime you had a verb in the red book that had an A before the T, that's a first conjugation verb. Here's how that verb would be written, by the way, if it were in the blue book. Paro, parare, parawi. And you see the ARE indicates a first conjugation verb. Look at this next one, habet, habuet, has. Anytime you saw in the red book a verb with the E before the T, it belongs to the second conjugation. Here's how that verb would have been written if it were in the blue book. Habeo, habere, habui. Long ERE in the infinitive means that the verb belongs to the second verb family, the second conjugation. Third conjugation and fourth conjugation, you both see the letter I right before the T. That was the old way of learning it. The new way of learning it will show us exactly which conjugation the verb belongs to because of what comes before the RE in the infinitive. So third conjugation, duco, ducere, no long mark over the E, duxi. Fourth conjugation, audio, audire, long IRE, audiwi. Here's a nice little chart to help you sort of summarize that information. So again, looking at the infinitive, meaning the second part of the verb, if it ends in ARE, it's a first conjugation verb. ERE with a long mark, it's second. ERE without the long mark, third. And IRE, it is fourth. All right. Here are, by the way, you notice that verbs have 3 parts. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, does that mean I have to memorize all 3 parts of every verb from here on out? And the answer is yes and no. And here's why. Because the conjugations have general patterns for how the principal parts end. For example, in first conjugation, I would say this pattern holds true about 94% of the time, and I like those odds. The first part of the verb will end in O. Second part, the infinitive, ARE. And the third part, the perfect tense, AVI. As in paro, parare, parawi. Canto, cantare, cantawi. Festino, festinari, festinawi. Ambulo, ambulare, ambulawi. Et cetera, et cetera. Second conjugation verbs will have this general pattern. This holds true about 80% of the time. I still like those odds. Eo, ere, ui. As in, you have a verb from stage 13. Reteneo, retenere, retenui. Habeo, habere, habui. All right? So if you know the conjugation of the verb and you know these patterns, it cuts down on what you have to memorize. Now, the third conjugation is just weird, right? The first part ends in O. The second part, the infinitive, will end in ERE. The third part, think about it. Third conjugation, how do we recognize the, well, I shouldn't say third conjugation, but how do we recognize the perfect tense? Usually we have V, S, U, or X, or long vowels, right? V sucks. This third part of a third conjugation verbs will often just do some strange things in terms of spelling, but they always end in the letter I. So it might, go dico, dicere, and then dixi, D-I-X-I. But then you would see another third conjugation verb that might do something totally different. So just be on the lookout for that. You just have to memorize whatever the third part is of a third conjugation verb. Here's another example. Facio, facere, feci, F-E-C-I, right? Looks nothing like dixi, D-I-X-I. But with fourth conjugation verbs, we have this pattern, and this pattern holds true, just like first conjugation, about 94% of the time. I like those odds. So io, ire, iwi, as in audio, audire, audiwi, to listen, punio, punire, puniwi, to punish, et cetera. Now, one last thing about infinitives is that infinitives give us something called the present stem of a verb. Let's take a look at this verb, paro, parare, parawi, once again. So some people are going to ask, well, wait a minute, if this is the way that the verbs look from here on out, then how do I go from paro, meaning I prepare? What if I saw parat in a sentence, she prepares? How do I know that, how do I get that A, right? So if you look at all those parts there, the infinitive gives us the stem to which we then add different endings. And that's called the present stem. Well, how do we get that stem? All you do is you take the infinitive and you just chop off the RE. And so, for example, the stem for paro, the present stem, would simply be para. And then, what do? That's the stem that I then add the rest of my endings to form, for example, the present tense. So I leave paro alone because, hey, my new way of looking at verbs, I'm learning automatically the first person singular present tense form, paro, parare, parawi. So how do I get the other forms of the present tense? Well, I take the infinitive, chop off the RE, and then I've got paras, parat, paramus, paratus, parant. And then, last but not least, despite its name, the present stem is also used to form the imperfect tense, as in para, bam, para, bas, para, bat, etc. And then also the future tenses. Of course, you know future tense, I taught you that was for verbs that end in AT or ET. We can reframe that now as first and second conjugations. And that would be like parabo, para, bis, para, bit, etc. Okay, I think that's enough. We are going to practice quite a bit in class. I promise that you will get this. It may seem overwhelming, but everything will be okay. You know that I like whales, but I also like camels too. Goodbye, my friends.